Hello everyone. So my name is Velvet. I am a member of the Evo plural system. I am wanting to be a VTuber or a PNG tuber, and this is essentially my first attempt to talk about something, and I have created this simple PNG tuber that I can use for future videos, and this is just a sort of practice that I am doing to edit and figure out if this is for me or not. But I wanted to cover a topic that I have found recently. We have, as a system, found very recently. As you don't know what a system is, you can of course Google it or talk to other people you know who may be a system. But it basically is multiple people who share one mind, one body, and I am just one of the many people who share my physical body. So I am going to have to put a warning on this because there is going to be a lot of transphobia. There's going to be a mention of suicide. I'm going to show some images of a thing that I found our biological mother had wrote on her Facebook page about us when we were younger. And this is something I found and read, and I was extremely disappointed in, I suppose, what she was sort of saying, because she was trying to discredit the transgender experience and talk about personal things that she shouldn't be talking about. So I'm just going to sort of go through all of these and respond to it and explain the sort of the horrible things she is saying. And I will say that I'm going to be insulting her because I have no problem insulting disrespectful transphobes who want to erase our existence, because this whole post that she wrote on Facebook for her friends to see is very, very disrespectful, very inappropriate. So I also censored the images. I censored at any time they use the incorrect pronouns or names, and just sort of for my own privacy, but also just to sort of water down how disrespectful it is and not have to look at it the whole time. This is the first time I have done this, so I apologize if it's a bit messy and I don't exactly know what I'm doing with this. And to give you a little bit more context on who I am, I use she, they pronouns. I am about 30 years old in the headspace, and I'm also a moth otherkin. I am a red velvet moth, and that is where the name comes from. But I am the self-proclaimed real mother of the system instead of, whatever, whoever this person thinks she is. So there's a little bit more about myself. You can go find out more about us and each other headmate under our name Evosys. You can find us on Blue Sky, Toy House, all of that. I'm also going to be speaking on behalf of the whole system here, so I might say I experienced this certain time, but I had formed until later on in life. I formed when we were 24 years old, so I don't have direct experience with it, but I have a lot of familiarity and communication with the other headmates, so I am the one making this video and talking about it. So it's going to be from sort of my perspective and on behalf of the entire system. I'm going to get into it, and you will see the images on the screen here. I'm going to go through each topic one at a time. The page was written in 2023, and since then we have not spoken to her. I think we sent her a few messages and emails in around that time. I don't quite remember all of the times, but we used to do that. And she starts out by saying that she wants to share that she has a child whose life is in danger, which is referring to me. She is referring to us as collectively as the system, but in her mind, she only sees one person. She only believes there's one identity here, and that's the identity that she has sort of claimed for herself, and won't get to know us for who we really are. So she wants to ask people in her friend group to approach the throne of God on my behalf. And I am, first of all, my life is not in danger. She is misinterpreting the sort of things that I am dealing with now and the things I was dealing with then. And she's going to later on use mental illness as an excuse to mistreat me. And I don't believe that it is a good thing to approach God on the behalf of another person. Like, if that person isn't going to listen to you and they don't want to talk to you, and you're going to go to God on their behalf to pray for them against their will, like, I think that is a very inappropriate thing to do, and I don't think that God himself is going to answer those kinds of prayers. And she says that she has been dealing with this for years now, but she has not shared much. This will make some of you, as her friends, angry, and you may want to unfriend me. That's okay. I won't stay silent about it. She has not been dealing with this for years. She was barely a part of my life to begin with. She was never a part of our lives. She didn't really know who we were and would never really talk to us or listen to us. She was very neglectful as a mother, and she doesn't know what she's doing. So I don't know what she's saying. She's dealing with it because she doesn't have it in her life, like, at all. And she goes to say, my child was diagnosed with a high-functioning autism when they were 15, and they had major problems before that age, but they did not recognize it because there were other factors and diseases and things that were going on. We, as a system, believe that diagnosis was a flop. To say the least, we went along with that bullshit and were met with doctors who didn't really know what they were doing. Sure, we could have autism, and we have friends who are autistic, and we relate to them, but it's not my entire identity or the reason for all of my behaviors, and it's certainly not an excuse to abuse your kid for being hypersensitive to a few things that you did not like or something like that. And she says that that we went absolutely berserk when we hit puberty, which was about late 15, 16s. And she's blaming it on the hormones, and she had done this in the past to say that all of our emotions and any problem we were having was the hormones' fault, and saying that we were having 5-hour-long meltdowns, which is, all of this is just extremely inappropriate to say and about someone. I find it hilarious to an extent, like humorous, that she would use this sort of inappropriate wording about someone that she supposedly cares about, and saying that her family was in a crisis because their kid was emotionally upset that you were abusing them. Like, it's all very ridiculous. So she went on to get this high-functioning autism, or at the time it was Asperger's, evaluation and diagnosis, and brought upon these therapists in their home at the time. It was called ABA therapist, and I call them conversion therapists because that's essentially what they were. Yes, it is very insulting for someone to say that, to chalk us down to our meltdowns and talk about this, because we weren't actually really having a meltdowns, and we were getting frustrated and crying because our parents would yell at us in our face and shove us into the basement, is where we lived. We slept in the basement, and sometimes we would get put in the closets. We would get spanked with a spoon or a belt. We would also get our food taken away, and just a lot of neglect and a lot of siblings fighting, and then the parents were fighting in the bedroom. They eventually got divorced. But it all just kind of shows that she has absolutely no self-awareness about the kind of a trauma that she was inflicting onto us to cause us to have these emotions in the first place. And these therapists, they were very insensitive, and they are only experienced with people who are younger, like people who are 7 or 8 years old or younger. Like, that's what they are trained on. They're not trained on people who are 15, 16 years old, who are having problems that may or may not be related to the diagnosis in the first place, because there was no context of the sort of in-home abuse that was going on, because with narcissistic parents, they will do anything to make themselves look good on the outside and to other people, and they will excuse their actions. And I can see that this is all about her and how it saved her from the fact that she had to deal with adult responsibilities as a parent. Like, as soon as a therapist came into the home, she would go out of the house, and she would go have coffee with people and to meet new boyfriends and just do and be really irresponsible. And she was never there. I mean, she was there. She was not actually hanging out with us or doing anything except mocking us and talking to the therapist about how they can further control our behaviors. And I could make a whole nother video about the therapist and what they were doing and why they were abusive, but I'm going to refrain from that for now because we have other things to talk about and I don't want this to be too long. So now they are 22. We are 25 now, just throwing that out there. This is 3 years too late. They left home at the age of 19 and lived in another state with a friend for a while. I believe the start of their decline into where they are now started in their teens with a Minecraft server. And I censored that server's name for just the protection of the server and the other people who may be playing on there. It's also quite insulting for her to say that this is a decline. Like, yeah, no, I don't think growing up and becoming my own person is a decline. I don't think being an adult and moving out of your house, like, and expressing that I have issues with you, like, that's not a decline. So the server, she is going on to say that this is a server where a lot of autistic people were playing, and it had a lot of rules and things, and that's sort of what she thought it was a safe space because it was tailored about these things that she was sort of think she was dealing with at the time, and it is she did not know that there's LGBT supporters and, as she says, quote, ideology. And another thing that I think is so funny is that the LGBT-ness of the server was very tame. Like, they weren't allowed to talk about sexuality or sex or any of that because it was a kid-friendly server. So she is complaining that they have rainbow flags and that some of the people on the server identify as gay or have different pronouns than her. Like, it is all quite ridiculous. She thinks that the rainbow flags are going to make you gay. And she's frustrated with the fact that, because all of this is about her anti-LGBT agenda. That's what this whole thing is about. As you will start to see later, the transphobia really starts to come in, and she's basically using the pronouns from birth in this whole post, and just being very, like, not self-aware or respectful in the slightest. And, you know, those people that we met on the Minecraft server, we are still best friends with some of those people. Like, we lived with those people, we roommated with those people. They got us out of that situation, and we still talk to them. Like, we did not get those friends from church, we did not get those friends from youth group, or whatever groups they try and force us into. We made those friends online on our own terms. And it was a safe place. It was a safe place for us, and it was where we learned a lot of our social skills and went on to develop connections and, like, learn about ourselves and understand what we had gone through. And had they not, we probably would have tried to kill ourselves. Like, we've already had some suicide attempts that did not lead to anything because we got scared and backed out of it, and thankful for that. But they got us out of that mind space. And yes, autistic people can be queer. Non-autistic people can also be queer. There's nothing wrong with being queer, and it's not an ideology. It's not a belief system. It's just the way people are. And maybe they feel out of place because Karens like her refuse to, I don't know, listen to them and support their existence. They feel out of place because the people are telling them that they can't be this or that. And she's blaming it on the fact that they are fixating on things and that they they feel out of place because they are autistic. That no, this is something that everyone deals with, because there's this bigotry that goes on in the world. So there is another screenshot here. There's a total of 3 screenshots, but we got number 2. And so she starts off by saying that we are a very lost person who has significant mental illness. So who said anything about being lost? And who are you to say how mentally ill we are? Like, that is not an excuse to be saying the things that you are saying and to treat us the way we're treating. Like, I think she sort of views it as like a gotcha point to say, like, oh, this person is depressed and mentally ill because they are transgender. So that is proof that the LGBT ideology is bad and hurting people. But, you know, we are actually quite firm in our identity, and we grew out of being lost. Once we got out of her house, like, we were very lost and confused about reality and the people we knew. Like, when we lived with her, because she was abusing us and grooming us when we were a kid and a teenager, basically our whole lives, because she didn't know fuck of what she was doing. And I think it's quite ridiculous to use that as a gotcha point to say that we are a very lost person to be. It's just manipulating people into thinking that we don't have the spirit of God within us. Which is true to an extent, because I am an atheist, but they have now denied that they have autism and is calling me and the therapist they experienced in our home abusive. Yes, we denied it in the past because the whole bullshit ordeal with them trying to have control over us and define our entire identity to a list of symptoms that you considered unnatural and in need of fixing. I had literal trauma surrounded being perceived as autistic because I didn't know what it actually was until later in life, when I was able to do my own research and self-diagnose myself with the things that actually made sense for me and made sense to define my own experience. Because are we forgetting that I am a person with a will of my own and that you can't label me as whatever you want? I don't care shit about a diagnosis. I still have that diagnosis and I identify with parts of the experience, but that doesn't define me. And I'm not going to tell everybody from the rooftops that I am autistic and that is why I do the things I do. And again, she is entirely lacking in self-awareness here, as she says that they're constantly changing what they believe in. They have gone from non-binary to wanting to be male to believing they have multiple personality disorder and is therefore fluid. They want to be called the name that was the host name at the time, and now they have undecided on what they want to be called, but have been signing things as this other host that we had at the time, and she just doesn't seem to understand anything about plurality, and we already explained it to her. We already explained that we are plural in the emails before and showed her plenty of resources about DID and plurality and the experience, and she is completely denying it. So she is saying this stuff to make it look like it is just someone who is lost and fluid, but we are actually quite firm in our identity, as I said, and we know who we are. And the other names she is mentioning, like those are just other headmates and alters in the system who existed at different times to speak to her. They're not one person changing their name and changing their genders. No, that is their name and their gender the entire time. It is not. Nobody is changing it, and it is. I think it is quite ignorant of her to pretend like she does not know what this is. She does not want to accept it, and it's quite ridiculous that she's turning this into like something that you can believe in, because like with transgender, like you don't believe that someone is transgender. You take them seriously for where they're at. Like if I go up to someone and I tell them and they tell me what their name is, I'm not going to be like, oh well, I don't believe that is who you really are. No, we don't do that. And it's not my fault that she's too dense to educate herself about how any of this works. And calling me a disorder or a mental illness is quite insulting. And she continues on with this sort of, because of my belief of what the God's word, her God, says about these things. She has been convicted that it is wrong to use the preferred pronouns and the preferred name and, quote, confirm the multiple personalities. And, nobody cared about your belief in the first place. That's not an excuse to mistreat people. Like, if you say that you don't believe this is the right thing, like, okay, well, what about me and my beliefs? Does that not matter? You're just going to make this all about you again? What is it to say that, like, what if it wasn't your belief? Why do you need someone with more authority than you to tell you how to treat others? That's quite telling on what your childhood was like. You don't need other people to tell you to support your kid or not. You need to be loving and support your kid no matter what. Many people who know them have given them affirmation. Girl, our host at the time, was the first one in their group to come out as trans. Actually, we were the ones giving people affirmation and advice on how to be themselves and affirming them because we wanted nothing more as a kid than to be seen and listened to. I'm not living in some echo chamber of people who are affirming my experiences as real. Unlike someone I know. She says that they have been under pressure to keep lines of communication open or to meet them where they're at. And her other 3 children, which are my biological siblings, her husband and her have stood firm on this, and it has caused me to refuse to speak with them. I wonder why. I get an email from them about every 5 months. That is no longer true. We don't do that anymore because we decided to completely cut her off for our own safety and sanity. Yeah. So sometimes we'd talk like I am now, talk in a serious manner. We'd use capitalization. We were being respectful. We are being respectful to her and trying to explain our experiences and try and have a conversation with her. And she was sending these one-sentence emails in reply or trying to convince us to have a phone call with her so that which we did do a few times, and she ended up talking over us most of the time. And one of those times she ended up getting her husband onto the phone call, even though we agreed in the email that it would be a private phone call. And then she had this phone call, her husband was listening in, and then they both proceeded to misgender and use our dead name and then pretend to apologize right after saying it. And the whole thing was just everybody talking over me and being an absolute motherfucker in a situation. And also, I never have, and we never will need that woman's validation. We never need anyone's validation. I've had these quote-unquote multiple personalities since I was a kid, and we just hid it very well because that's sort of how it manifests when you're experiencing trauma, is that it hides from other people, and they can even hide from yourself for a while. Some people get diagnosed with DID when they are 40 years old. We just ended up lucky that we had the right people around us and the right resources. And we hid it from her the entire time because we recognized how unstable and dangerous as a parent she was. And I already get hate on the internet for being plural. I support plural, I support endos, and I'm a part of these communities. They're very stigmatized communities, and it's always funny to me when the people like this, they think that we're just doing this for attention, or that we're just doing this because we were coerced into it. Like, it's the same thing for every group that people are bigoted towards. And I have been dealing with this my whole life, and it is not fun to deal with these things. Okay, I experience dissociation and depersonalization, that it can be very stressful sometimes to help me cope with the trauma, because it is a trauma response first and foremost for us. But that doesn't mean she get to say that we don't have these things, or that we had to cure these things in order to have open communication again, because it's apparently against the word of God, which last time I checked, it wasn't. She's just cherry picking and making stuff up. And, you know, I quite literally put myself in danger of being open about it sometimes, but I will be open about it because people like me need me and they need other systems to speak up about it. And so, my child needs help. No, we disowned you. We are not your child. And it's not your responsibility to say or not if we need help. And you have not a mustard seed of a clue on what help is or ever was. They have not actually taken any action as far as transitioning. I don't know where she gets that from. This is just a straight up lie. And I guess she just doesn't know, but it's kind of weird because we told her we were transitioning and we socially transitioned online like 3 years before we moved out of our house. So I don't know where she gets that from. Or if she just said it for the sake of it to make her look a certain way, but we have transitioned and taken hormones for over 3 years and don't regret a single thing. And then she says that we spend most of our time in our room, which I don't know why that is a problem for her. For someone who is quoting autistic and prefers to be alone with their hobbies after being stuffed in a basement for half of our waking existence and fed Pediasure and dog food. Yeah, have you ever even seen or heard of this thing called depression? It still doesn't give you an excuse to impose whatever your sick idea of help is onto me. And she says that we moved in with her parents last April. Her mom died in June, which is true, and that we have created a fantasy world for ourselves where we can be our own friends and family, which, you know, are more family than you ever were and ever will be. That is my world, that is my hobbies and the things that matter to me, and you want to take that away from me to take away my creativity and personality. I wouldn't trade that for the world, babe. Now we're getting on to the third. She says that she will continue to do whatever she can, whenever I can, but right now her influence is limited. Your influence ended the moment you thought it was a good idea to start punishing your 6-year-old kid. Bitch, you have done nothing. We haven't heard from you in years, and you haven't made another post about us since, so sure, keep doing whatever it is that you do. We haven't heard from you. You haven't tried to reach out to us or fix anything between our relationship that we didn't even really have in the first place. You haven't apologized about all of the horrible things that you did. And this is the craziest part of the entire post. She says that we have fallen for the lies of the transgender cult. Now, this is possibly one of the most insane things I've ever seen someone just say, to the point it's just kind of humorous. It speaks entirely for itself on what kind of person she is, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Obviously, if you are trans, you are not a member of some cult, and the media has managed to brainwash so many people about this. I am sincerely sorry to all of my fellow trans folks that you have to deal with absolute garbage like this. Many who claim to be Christians have affirmed for them that God made a mistake and that they aren't really the gender we were assigned at birth, even though they don't believe that themselves. And I don't know what she's talking about because, yes, people do believe that they are trans, and nobody's claiming that God made a mistake. That is a lie that the media tells conservatives trans people are doing. If anything, I think God made us trans because the world needs queer people, or else we'd have a bunch of cis white men and women with a fetish for having white picket fence married life and fall completely into violence and war. If that's not already happening because of the kind of people who are in charge of America. Also, we have an entirely different view on what gender and sex even is, so until you can understand basic science, I don't have anything to say to your face without taking you as a complete idiot who doesn't know what she's talking about. Our children need intervention, not affirmation. She still says a child and children, and I am not a child, I am a fucking adult. I know some of you are dealing with similar scenarios. You can stand on the truth of God's word and be loving at the same time. In fact, it is loving to do so. Okay, clearly you haven't a clue on what love actually is and are speaking to an imaginary God for all of the kinds of delusional things you believe in. You believe in the whole love the sinner, hate the sin sort of thing, but that's the problem because you can't support part of a person while calling another part of them a sin. That's dissociation, not compassion. It's the same for gay people. Being gay is a part of that person. You can't have a person and then separate them from their sexuality. Like, that's just not how it works. And I think you know that. You're just uncomfortable with the fact that your kid, who you couldn't get complete control over and turn into a miniature version of yourself, ended up the big scary transgender and act as if we could have a relationship that I just detransitioned. If you do unbiased research, you will find that most detransition cases are due to family bullying and not being accepted, but yes, those people who detransitioned are still trans. And you are still trans if you don't physically or socially transition, by the way. You are still trans if you feel that way and you have to hide it for your own safety. We always have been and always will be trans because it is an intrinsic part of our experience as a living being. I'm sorry that you don't want to put the psychological effort in to understand my experience, but that's simply not my problem. I'm perfectly fine with not ever speaking to you again. In fact, I quite prefer that because you are my system's main abuser, and I completely think that you should be in prison right now for child grooming. Now, she talks about a encounter that we had with one of our younger siblings a while back on Discord. And that was when we cut him off and haven't really spoken to him since. And her son said to us after they, what in her words, tried to guilt him into compromising his convictions, which is ridiculous because he was fully supporting of us before that. He was in our Discord servers. We had a lot of fun together. We had a pretty alright relationship. And then she started stalking us and getting information about us through him. And she is the one who has guilted him into compromising his convictions. And he said to us, what good is it if you feel better if you end up going to hell? Girl, being trans doesn't feel better, as I already touched on a little bit earlier. It is actually quite a scary thing to be. I'm simply not willing to compromise who I am and live a lie so that motherfuckers like you can feel good about themselves. So, touche. Nobody is going to hell for being trans. That is like the definition of delusional and paranoid thinking, because you clearly have no love in your life. And then she starts to end this by saying, pray for that person and the other young people you know who are in danger. You know, what about the old people, right? In danger of losing their lives both physically and spiritually. Stand firm with love and kindness on the truth of words God. Hooray! I can't wait for all of you to pray the gay away. In danger of losing their lives because of people like you who put their lives in danger? Contact me for resources on how to deal with these issues if you are trying to navigate them in your own life. So, she's not trying to navigate shit. And you have all these people in the comments saying, oh, I am so sorry for you. Like, throwing her a pity party. Apologizing that she's the mom that has to deal with it. That she's a hurt mama who has to deal with, oh my god, their kid is transgender and plural and has a mental illness. Okay, I'm sorry that you birthed me, idiot. You can't have kids and then expect them to be exactly who you want them to be. You have to accept that your children will grow up to be their own people. And if you cannot handle that, if you cannot handle that thought or that responsibility, then you should not be having kids in the first place. There is one person that stood up to us in the comments, and she immediately responded with a sort of angry response, angry emojis, like, I can't believe you're saying this sort of thing. And we ended up reaching out to that person and had a little bit of a conversation. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this. There's a few more things I could have talked about, but I am just trying to respond to this simply and not over explain everything because I only have so much energy in me. And so I just want to say that I'm sorry to anybody who has to deal with this person. And I'm sorry to anybody who has to deal with people like this in their lives, because these people are just, I know how difficult they are to have in your life, to make you feel like you are not worth it, or that they're being very bigoted and mocking you for who you are. And it is not loving in the slightest. It's not okay to do these things. And especially, it's not okay to do these things in the name of God. Whether or not you really believe in God, I don't think she really believes in the Christian God. She just uses it as a sort of crutch. That's what she always has done with us when we were a kid and with other people, is use it as an excuse to validate her feelings about things that make her uncomfortable. But she doesn't actually follow what it means to be a Christian. So, maybe we can all sit here and laugh at it. Like, at the least, we can have a good laugh. We can make fun of these people they are an evil in the world. Like, they are out there hurting people. And I don't know if she's out there telling people like lies about who we are, and these people have never gotten even a chance to get to know who we are, and are just going off of what people like this woman are saying about us. And it's really quite heartbreaking, but it's also just, people will believe about you whatever they want to believe. You will say one thing and they will twist your words in so many different ways. So I just have to say, don't listen to people like that. Like, don't let people make you feel like you're not good enough, or that you can't be who you are. Like, it's not worth a life of agony. And these people, they eventually end up outing themselves, and they cannot keep up with their lives forever, because it's not the truth. They're not talking about the people in good faith and in honesty. They're just trying to get people in trouble and garner attention. Thank you for listening to me. If you want, you can subscribe. We don't really make any videos right now. This may be the only video that will be posted for a long time, but I'm going to be figuring out what kinds of topics I want to talk about, and if I want to do this some more. So I just appreciate you for listening, and I sort of made this in response to the person who wrote it. They might find it, but I appreciate other people and who may be listening to it and listen to our story. And we have a lot more about our personal story to talk about, but that's not in this video right now. So I may make another one about that, to talk about the ABA therapists. And we are very anti-ABA therapy at this point because of the abuse we went through. So